What is the worst thing you've ever done for money? Mine isn't all that bad, but I still feel crappy about it. I was working at this really nasty Denny's in a ghetto town, making shit tips and just feeling sorry for myself. My manager waggled his finger at me and requested that I follow him into the storage refrigerator. He pointed at a bunch of old pies and handed me a roll of stickers that said Friday. It was Saturday. "Here's what I want you to do," he said, pointing at the stickers. "Put those stickers over the Saturday stickers." He demonstrated by carefully placing a Friday sticker over a Saturday sticker so that the edges lined up. "But weren't these made a week ago?" I asked. He breathed slowly out through his nose, staring at me with hard eyes. "No, they were made a month ago. But they are perfectly fine." He threw the stickers on the counter and walked out, shouting, "Just do it." I felt sick as I carefully placed the sticky little liars on the ancient pies. TLDR, don't order the pie at Denny's. I cleaned houses in my lingerie gig I picked up in art school. At first I loved it. $20 per hour, they aren't allowed to touch. The clients were really respectful. Of course all of them wanted you to scrub the floor, on your hands and knees. After a month I started to feel awful about myself. Degraded. My last client treated me terribly, acted like I was a slave. He told me I did a bad job, and made me do it again. And again. And again. Until I was in tears. That's what he wanted. He paid me, tipped me very well. I felt gross and quit after. I've been playing guitar since I was 9 years old, so obviously I'm quite good at it. When I was a senior in high school, I rode the metro into downtown St. Louis, dressed up in my worst clothes, and played guitar on the street corner next to the metro station. Want to know how much money an 18-year-old white kid dressed in shitty clothes playing prog rock on his acoustic guitar next to the metro station makes in a few hours? $314. And they told me to get a job. I thought about doing it again, but I couldn't trick people like that more than once. Edit, I probably just have a weird moral compass, but I feel as if it's slightly dishonest to play street side and accept people's money when I don't really need it. I worked as a personal assistant to a 22-year-old who was in the midst of a psychotic breakdown. He hired me while he was drunk at a mutual friend's birthday party. He paid me $8 per hour to hang out with him in his apartment, do his laundry, drive him around, buy him socks, and watch movies with him. He hired my boyfriend as his personal chef, and another of our friends as his vice president. He would have me go over to his apartment to heat up food before bringing dates home, to trick them into thinking he had a butler. He sent me on a 2-day expedition to pick up a blown up print of the movie poster for the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka movie. He had me research SpongeBob episodes for some reason. My boyfriend cooked Cornish game hens and lobsters for him every day. I wrote some of his college papers for him. Eventually he decided to expand his business and hired a bunch of Harvard students as interns, and bought them all power books. They just sat around all day in his kitchen, day in and out, confused as duck. He made us play touch football together every afternoon. We had nothing but Smirnoff Ice and Red Bull in the fridge. Eventually it culminated in him taking us out for a night of debauchery, which ended up at a sleazy tattoo parlor, where he told us he'd give us money to tattoo his name on our bodies. He got a tattoo, 2 of the interns got tattoos, and my best friend who was along for the ride got a tattoo. I agreed to let him pay to pierce my nipple for a lesser sum of money. Ultimately he wound up crying hysterically while making out with my best friend. The next day his mother visited, found out what was going on, froze his assets, and shut the whole thing down. He bought us an arcade game, Killer Instinct, to put in our apartment as severance pay, and dropped out of school. We found out later that he had formerly gone to Brown University, where he was expelled for selling mushrooms, but because his father was a judge, he got off. It was the weirdest summer of my life. I made about $3,500. Sell my time for minimum wage. This stops being acceptable when you realize, I just cleaned a filthy toilet for 45 minutes. and I got paid $6 for that shit before taxes. Where in the world would someone approach me and say, this toilet has been shat upon by 200 people throughout the day, and they might not have all the motor skills required to do so. I'll give you $6 to clean it. And then somehow, I say, yes, why sure, I'll do that. I think I've told this story before, and I'm late to the party. When I was a teenager, a man offered me $100 to pee in his coffee cup at a 24 coffee house I hung out at. I did it, and then he looked me directly in the eyes as he drank it. This happened several times. To a 15-year-old, having someone pay you to pee and then drink it seemed awesome, and it was. Then I got older and learned it was a fetish, and for some reason, it shocked me. I don't regret it though. Bear Grylls has serious problems and should seek professional help. I didn't do this, but it happened to me. Last year while attending college, I stopped at a store one night to stock up on beer for the night. While I was walking in, a woman in a beat up old green car called out to me and asked me to come over to her. She looked like she was on the verge of crying, and gave me her sob story about how she was 20 minutes away from home and she ran out of gas, but didn't have enough money to make it back. It was close to Christmas, so being the sucker I am, I handed her all of what I had in my wallet, about $8 or so. I said, "Merry Christmas," and turned around and left. She didn't even say thank you. A little fishy, but I just shrugged it off. Fast forward a year later. I was at the same store grabbing, you guessed it, more beer for the night with some friends, when the same woman in the same green car pulled up by us. She gave us the exact same story and asked for a few bucks. I told my friends that it was a scam, and gave her a dirty look. On our way out I watched her giving the same sob story to a couple of other people, and I yelled, "She's lying, don't listen to her." They walked away, and the woman, who apparently was out of gas, sped away and gave me the harshest death stare I've ever gotten. In high school, my buddy and I become the art club's president and treasurer, respectively. We were broke so we robbed the club for gas money and beer. We found free things the club could do, so it's not like we stole the cash and screwed them over. We also set up a fake field trip, collected the cash, buy-in from everyone, and threw a giant party. The whole club was in on it. Their parents pitched in $50 a person, and we had a raging kegger. The parents believed we were heading up north for a one-night camping trip, so we could work on our still life paintings. Instead, we drank ourselves silly and smoked a ton of weed. There was plenty of cash left over to get some convincing receipts. The art club never found out. However, one of the students ratted us out when we got back. My buddy and I got suspended for 5 days. That's actually a pretty light sentence when you think about it. Also, another friend and I threw a raging kegger when the PS2 came out. We charged everyone walking in $10. When we hit $650, we called 911 and got the party busted up. We then left and stood in line to get our free PS2s. That's probably the worst thing I've done. Especially since we used some random person's house. My stepsister once found $10 at the fair. She decided to do the right thing and turn it in. I later on went to the office and pretended like I lost my $10. I felt bad. But I knew nobody was going to claim that shit. I worked on a frack drilling rig for one day. They had thousands of pounds of chemicals that got rained on and the bags were falling apart, so they had me cut open all these bags marked dispose of properly and toxic, and dump them into a pond nearby since they couldn't use them. If that's the shit they have someone new who they don't know do, I can't even imagine the secret shit they do when no one is looking. I did not go back the next day, and soon after got a job with the Nature Conservancy. I broke into someone's house with the intention of planting incriminating evidence on a guy's hard drive in an effort to get his girlfriend to break up with him. The goal was for my employer to subsequently swoop in and steal her. The funny thing was I didn't even need to implant the fake stuff I had brought. The guy already had some pretty sick shit on his hard drive, so all I had to do was make copies and leave them in a conspicuous place for the girlfriend to find. And that's the story of how I was able to afford my Xbox. Not so much the worst thing I did for money, but the worst thing I ever paid for, inspired by the slug story. I worked at a summer camp for a long time, and one year there were these huge worms everywhere, as it had been a wet summer. These duckers were like 6 inches long and half an inch wide. I told a bunch of 9-year-olds I'd give them $1 each if they ate a worm, but very quickly the market economics of the situation drove the price down, as some of these 9-year-olds displayed some sharp business savvy, undercutting one another until the price was down to 5 cents per worm. I am responsible for worm genocide at a summer camp, and it only cost me about $3, and a lot of puking children. Once upon a time, I had long hair, and wore skinny jeans, and was wearing a big winter jacket, and was a feminine young teenaged boy. The point is that sometimes people thought I was a girl. One day, after a long day at work, I was exhausted. I sat down on the bus, 11:45 at night, and this super drunk guy sits down a few seats back, and drunkenly says, "Hey, what's up?" I nod at him. About halfway to my house, he moves into the seat right behind me and leans over. "Hey, you alright darling?" At this point I realize he thinks I'm a girl, and don't want to freak him out by talking with my obviously male voice, so I just say a meek, "Yeah." He nods and sits back down in his own spot. About 30 seconds before my bus stop, he gets up, moves to the seat behind me, looks around quickly, and puts a $100 bill next to me, then goes back and sits down. I look at him, utterly shocked, and he gives me this sly smile and nod, and motions me towards him. Obviously I took the money and got off the bus. I didn't actually do anything aside from look pretty, but I still felt pretty dirty. Ah, man. You should have said, "Thanks buddy," in your manliest voice as you were exiting the bus. Lol. Back when I was in the same situation, long hair, tight clothes, I was mistaken for a girl at a bar, guy offered to buy me a drink, and I was underage at an all ages show. I kept my voice higher until I got it, then I pushed my hair back and said, "Thanks man." He decked me right there. Luckily security was on that quick lol, but yay, didn't try that shit again. When I was about 17, some freshman girls at my school asked if I could get them any sort of pills. I told them yeah, and asked what they wanted. The girls said ecstasy. I knew where to get ecstasy, but they wanted it within the next 6 hours or so. Knowing they were complete idiots, I told them it'd be $10 per pill, so they asked for 3. I got a plastic bag and put 3 vitamin C tablets in it, and sold it to them. The next week, they asked me for more because they said it barely worked. Very late early in the morning, 2 AM or so, I was going home from the bars and walked up a very long stretch of subway stairs. I was wearing a short skirt. The guy behind me offered me $100 to walk up the stairs again, and well, I needed the money. I walked up the stairs again. He gave me the money. I walked away. Best comment of the day. A few years back, my mom and I caught a man, the laziest person ever, dressing up in a white Salvation Army suit behind a Save Mart, and watched him get a donation bucket with the Salvation Army logo on it with the top cut out, and then walk in front of the store and ring a bell for donations. My mom went in and told all of the cashiers to warn customers that there was a fake Salvation Army charity worker outside ringing a bell. And my mom even went up to him and told him he shouldn't be doing that. He pulled a no habla English, and then my mom went on to cuss him out in Spanish. She told him he was going to hell for what he was doing. The dude didn't leave right away, but he did leave after a few minutes. The only reason my mom did this was because we had learned that the Salvation Army doesn't have charitable workers collect donations all year round, especially in or around summer, only near Christmas. In our area, dressed up as Santa, it was the last week of June.